welcome to Outside the Box. I'm your host, Grant Pruitt. Thank you for joining us today. I want to give a special shout out, as all, to my hype man, Zach Lewis.
Oh, thank you, Grant. I appreciate it. Hype man, I'll take it. Yeah.
You're now my hype man. I got two hype man and a hype woman today.
Yeah.
Thrilled to have Beth Burke with me. She's a pleasure to have on. Thank you for joining us, Beth.
Sure, Grant. It's great to be here.
She is our most recent hire at Whitebox. She is the brains behind the unorganized brains of our company quite often. She serves in our operations as an executive coordinator. Long tenure in real estate, originally in property management, then on the operations side. We are absolutely thrilled to have her with us. And the genesis of this show is we're a company that's always trying to grow, and that's very important for us. It's very important for a lot of our clients, and it's important for a lot of businesses in general. It's 3.2% vacant, or 3.2% unemployment rate in Dallas-Fort Worth, and we're creating 298 jobs a day. It's hard. Culture is very important, and what we're really trying to focus on is the future of the workforce for the employees today, the employees that are coming into the workplace, and the employees of the future. And in order for us to grow and thrive and be a sustainable business, that's important. But before we get into all of the finer details, which, Beth, you've been doing a little bit of your own survey as it relates to this as well, haven't you?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that in our survey results here. But you're a huge college football fan, right?
I am. I am.
Who is your team? They're in Bryan College Station, is that right?
That's a mistake.
Really?
Yeah. I need an expert in me right now, and a college football team would be the Texas Longhorns.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, they're an up-and-coming team. From the dumpster to the numbsters.
Yeah, they've had a great season this season.
Yeah, I mean, considering 2-3 seasons ago we were a 4-win team, it's nice to be competing for the conference title. Can't beat it.
And what bowl game are y'all in?
We'll be going to the Sugar Bowl.
Sugar Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And you're playing?
That's Georgia, which is really interesting. So
and you're ranked number 8, is that right?
I couldn't tell you. I
Something
haven't looked
like
at these.
And Georgia was too.
Yeah, I think 5 now maybe.
Okay.
Just out of the playoffs. But my family is half Longhorn fan, half Georgia fan. So
great.
And that's on my dad's side. And then my mom's side, we have some. We got A&M Tech. Cliff Kingsbury is a second cousin of mine. So it kind of.
You were kidding.
Runs in the family. Yeah.
Wow. There you go. There's another stat. Cliff Kingsbury, cousin. How is first cousin, second cousin?
He's a second cousin once removed. So he's I don't know, over there.
Not like Thanksgiving table material, is that what I'm hearing?
No, he's not. Although another cousin of mine, actually 2 of them, both played at A&M.
Really?
One was the backup quarterback for Reggie McNeil back in my day.
Sure.
And the late 90s,
right.
Early 2000s. And actually, he was a team captain, a prestigious award winner there at A&M. So he's coaching now in Austin, quarterbacks coach at one of the high schools there.
So Cliff Kingsbury, I watched him in double, I believe it's double, not triple, but double overtime for the state championship at Alamo Stadium in like 20-degree weather. He was unbelievable. He played both ways, kicked and punted. Unbelievable athlete. Anyways. All right, so big college football fan. You're also a singer-songwriter.
I am. Mm-hmm.
So tell us, what genre of music do you prefer?
Do I prefer to listen to or play?
Play.
Okay, look, let's be real. What you expect a girl in a coffee shop to be playing, that's what I'm playing. Covers, originals. I'm not a great guitar player, but I'm a pretty good singer, so it's kind of a let your voice be your guide situation.
I'm not sure that playing the guitar is that important. I went to the opening of the AT&T Stadium. At the time, it was just Jerry World. And they had all these different people. George Strait played, Reba McEntire played, but one of them was Blake Shelton. And Blake Shelton gets up there and goes, well, I had some problems, and I don't have my band, and I'm not a very good guitar player, so I'm sorry you got to listen to me. I'm like, well, if that guy is not a good guitar player, it seems to have worked out just fine for him.
Well, they say you just need to know 4 chords and the truth, so.
It's like hot cross buns.
Exactly.
So, all right, so what kind of music do you prefer to listen to then, right? Hot cross buns, hot cross
Sorry,
buns.
we've confused you.
No, please. Yeah.
I was just agreeing because he's the boss. I don't know.
Dude, oh, God.
Listen to, I've got a pretty wide range. I like some country. My first concert that I ever went to was John Denver.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. That is legit.
Yeah, that's no joke.
It was at Wolf Trap in D.C. on the lawn.
Wow.
I think I was 6 or 7. So I love folksy music. I love, just top 40 country, kind of a, like college crybaby music. What do they call that now? Alt rock.
Acoustic?
Sure.
Yeah, that kind of.
College crybaby music.
Oh.
Like lighter grunge.
Like, it used to be like the Radioheads and stuff, but
Yeah.
now it's more. And then there's the fun, like alt countries, like.
Would that be like a Wilco?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so just kind of whatever's on. Christmas music is out right now.
Yeah.
Sign
for
me up.
real.
Yeah.
Can you play a couple acoustic Christmas tunes? Is that you got a couple in your repertoire, I guess?
I probably could, yeah.
Okay. I mean, not to put you on the spot. I just mean, like, in general, if you're
Sure.
at a
You're
coffee
really
shop.
are you trying to get an
Yes.
album together?
Yeah, is that what I'm?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I learned to play the guitar just to learn to accompany myself if I was going to go, I don't know, try to impress someone. And did a couple of musical theater in college. And then started writing songs. And when I started writing songs, I would write really like general, it's all about love and life. And then I wrote a song called The Little Apartment, and it was about this one night after a breakup when I went down to Gillies, and it was raining, and it was just a real specific song. And people really responded to that more than anything else. And so ever since then, it's just been kind of writing from experience.
I was going to say, that's what people like. They
Yeah.
like passion.
You wouldn't think they would, but someone will always come up to me and be like, oh, that reminds me of this time. So it's not always the same experience, obviously, but it's the same life experience,
But isn't art about experiencing emotions and feelings through other people?
I guess so, yeah.
I mean, whether it's the written word, the painted word, not the painted word,
Doesn't sound right.
paintings. I'll just keep it easy. But is that not what art is about?
I mean, yeah, I would think so. Not only the outward expression, the verbal or visual expression of the artist, but yeah, the receptive expression of the seer.
Right. So you like to travel as well, don't you?
I mean, if there's a beach, I want to be there.
Okay. I think most people can relate to that, especially at this time of year.
Yeah.
Anything that gets out of this nasty, cold, rainy weather. What else do people not know about you that surprises people?
Probably not much. There's I'm a pretty vocal gal, so everyone likes a little attention, so I like to keep that on me. So people usually know a lot about me.
So, transitioning to kind of what the topic of this. First of all, thank you for coming on.
Problem, Grant.
Thank you for volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
The topic of this podcast is about the ever-changing workplace, and to a certain extent, it's overused. You have a great background in real estate and can probably empathize with me in that it feels like that is all that anyone talks about in the industry of real estate. Oh, the changing workforce, the millennial workforce, blah, blah, blah. And to a certain extent, it's overused, and it's been talked about so much that people fail to recognize the impact of the ever-changing workplace. Would you say that's accurate?
I think that's accurate. Real estate, commercial real estate in general, in Dallas specifically, is so appealing to a changing workforce because so many opportunities are perceived to be, I don't want to say left alone, but to work independently,
Right.
to reach out for resources that are available when needed, but not necessarily feel like Grandpa CEO is, looking over them all the time.
Right. And, from a sustainability portion of the company, we've talked about how the industry is changing and, our core focus is a little bit different than some other firms, especially as we continue to move forward, just not being on the tenant buyer user side, on the middle market company side. But I also think, there's a pretty large delta as far as age ranges in real estate. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. It's not a lot of, what are we, Gen X? What am I, Gen X?
Gen X,
Yeah,
sure.
as we were talking about earlier,
Depends where you
offline.
draw the line, which is what's interesting about Gen X, Gen Y.
And the Xennials, what's that middle one now between Gen X and
To be
millennials?
honest, it loses me.
Yeah. I definitely consider myself a Gen Xer. I'm a little on the young side, I think, for that, but definitely that's where my skill set, work ethic, mindset about going to work fall.
Right,
for sure.
right. So recently you've been working on improving our processes, improving our operations. And I think I'm as guilty as anybody else in real estate that you talk about it all the time with everybody else, and it's a bit hypocritical in that you're never analyzing it within your own company. That's always someone else's problem, and you don't realize it within your own company. And recently you've been working with our company on their communication flows, their teaming, and the processes. And what I think has been a shocker for me, and maybe you knew this or didn't know this, has been how collaborative the workforce is becoming.
Yeah. I asked a question that we don't need to get into on here, but I was just really surprised by the answer. And it was basically whether you're wanting, an expert in you or an expert at something else. And I was really surprised just because in commercial real estate, because there is such an age gap, typically anyone my age or older is going to want a right hand to them that understands their moods. Oh, not supposed to pound on that table. Understands their moods and, knows that they can say 5 words and Beth can take off running and take care of that. But, it really, the feedback that we got from most of our team was that they really wanted everyone to be an expert at what they do.
And I think that's unique in that, you can guess which side of the line I naturally gravitated to, the side of me, mine. And while it has worked for really since the 1980s as a model in real estate, which is really, Trammell Crow's the genesis of real estate. And what we had a interesting podcast on the history of commercial real estate, really drilled down a lot on Trammell Crow and his legacy and how he impacted all the different firms around the city in some way, shape, or form. But old habits die hard. And, I grew out of that system of the 1980s school of thought. And you had 2 options. You could either embrace it and accept it or leave. And in a war for talent like we're having, the talent is out there, or at least I feel like it's out there. In a war for talent, the teaming aspect and the specialization aspect is very different than anything that I am used to and anything that I've seen at any other companies. So I have a couple of kind of stats and generational drivers. One thing that I'd like to point out is, we hear a lot about millennials. You see it all over the papers everywhere, and it does get worn out. But for the record, if you were born after 1996, they loop somewhere in and around that area. They group you into Gen Z. So we're now moving past millennials to Gen Z. And this year was or will be the first year, I guess in May, it'll be the first year that Gen Z enters the workforce.
So you're telling me that the year I got my driver's license, those kids are joining the workforce.
Yeah, I'm telling you that. They are joining the workforce. And they are similar to the millennial generation, especially on the later end of the spectrum. But they do have some unique nuances. One of the things that they're looking for, and we see this in the latter part of the millennial generation, is the authenticity and experience. They're big on experiences. And the top 5 drivers for Gen Z have been limitless connection, which if you were born in 1996, you probably don't remember life without a computer.
I would imagine not.
Purposeful environments, personal well-being, transparency, and infused technology. So the technology and the culmination of the platforms and mediums is very big to this group. And then it's really big on the team collaborative environment. And I have the fortune of going around the country and talking to different companies, architects, thought leaders, businessmen, and one of the biggest things that I hear from these people is if you go to the universities, the university system is all about team. And whereas I would have loved to have had a team to sneak by in some of the courses that I had in college, it would have helped. I would have been the weakest link for sure. But while that would have helped, it wasn't as prevalent. It's my understanding that the collegiate system very much now is about a team mentality. They do all their projects and assignments in a team mentality, and that starting at a very, very young age, these individuals learn about teaming and they learn about the importance of specialization.
That's a really interesting thing that you just said. I had been having a little trouble for the last year or so putting my finger on a specific problem for me. And that problem is that it seems like the younger they get, here in the workforce, I'm always thinking that they're going to be that much better at, say, technology.
Right.
Using Excel. So I found that all these younger millennials, especially, none of them really know how to use Excel. And I didn't know if it was because I felt like maybe they were used to more specialty programs for the different things they are working on or studying, or maybe we're looking at an environment where someone else already knew Excel, so to get things done, it was never important for them to learn.
The sharing environment in a resources way.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I wonder if apps have something to do with that as well.
That's what I'm thinking.
They can get an app that does it.
Yeah, I don't need Excel to do this budget because I can get a budget app. I mean, that might be true because I was talking to someone about a mileage report. Oh, well, just get this app. And I'm like, just get a spreadsheet, man. Like, it's free.
Wow.
So,
Or you can just get a log and log your mileage. Yeah. I think there's some value to that, and they say that 68% of Gen Z say that collaboration and socialization provide the greatest work satisfaction.
You know, that's interesting too, and it might just be because these aren't quite in the workforce as prevalently as, say, a Gen Xers are right now. But I recently read a white paper on, everyone's moving to these collaborative teaming environments
right.
and these workspaces, and they've actually found that it decreases productivity because people are so much more guarded of their personal space. And that could be because they're Gen Xers like me, and maybe that trend will start to work in, say, 5-10 years. But it looks like right now it's kind of missing the mark, which I thought was really interesting because so much emphasis in tenant build-outs and building selection these days is based on whether or not we can have a teaming environment, a bullpen environment.
Right. And so to piggyback on that, 80% of Gen Z prefers a mix of team and individual workspaces during a day, which I think, we've been seeing this for years. Hoteling's been around for 20 years now, and that takes it to one extreme, as well as benching, which in Europe and in New York obviously is not a new concept. But the challenge that we hear time and time again is that there's no personal space, and without that personal space, sometimes you got to have personal calls. Sometimes you got to have quiet time and somewhere to think, and trying to integrate that into a workplace is important. But I think that has maybe a broader concept beyond just the space. From an organization standpoint, would you say that there needs to be some sort of differentiation between team activities and individual activities? I mean, traditionally in this business, it was always individual. Hey, here's a phone book, go get it.
You run a risk. You can want one or the other or both for your company, but it's really about the personalities you're hiring, and trying to fit someone into that. If you've got an individual you're trying to fit into a team environment, can be toxic. And
right.
So it's just really important to look at your recruiting and your staffing, when making those decisions. And ultimately, it's the culture that you want at your company. And it's hit or miss, and you just have to be willing to make those hard choices where you see a talent that you really want, but you just know it's not going to be a fit in the way
right.
you want to run. You want your company to run, and you want your employees to feel comfortable. Right. And so sometimes you have to pass on that talent, just to keep the cogs moving. Right.
And that's a tough business decision. I think along those same lines, the successive generations, they tend to long for a voice more than some others. Not that a voice shouldn't have been given in the past, but I think as a company, one thing that I try really hard to be cognizant of is that the best ideas can come from anyone. And, a lot of companies try and be open to new ideas and open to others' ideas, but not everybody practices what they preach.
Yeah, and it's definitely difficult. I see it a lot, and more on the administrative side than on the sales or brokerage side, where people have been in a role and they're used to doing it their way. You can present smarter options or more efficient options, but not only is it's just a sense of ownership. I've been doing it this way, and it works for me, and it works for the
right.
company. And that attitude can really filter down. And so, again, not just with hiring your talent, you have to be aware of who you've got in place and what kind of environment they're fostering.
So let's talk about that longer term. I think that has a huge impact to our industry long term as it relates to the longevity of the industry, and that, I don't want to knock on them, but it's true. GM, we'll take it back. Oldsmobile, my mother used to have an Oldsmobile. If you ask some of the new people in this building, I'm sure that they wouldn't be familiar with an Oldsmobile. It was a great car. They made a great car, but Oldsmobile doesn't exist anymore. They went by the wayside. They stuck to what they had done time and time and time again. And even though the automobile industry is still alive and well, but the Oldsmobile's dead. I say it a lot, and I really mean it, in that in our industry, if firms aren't willing to change and embrace this cultural change and embrace this in order to grow, I mean, ultimately that's what it's about. As a company, I say this time and time again, you know this, we want to grow. We have to scale. We have to continue to grow. We have to continue to hire talent to keep up with this war for talent. What do you think about that? You think that the industry as a whole, you know, I've said before that it's a staid industry. I mean, do you see some of these big name companies turning into Oldsmobile?
It's difficult. These bigger companies, these larger companies with national presence and so many facets, basically, they're trying to get consistent branding out, you know, and this is my marketing side, but they want consistent branding. They want consistent processes. And so they want to change. A lot of times you see when decisions are coming down from the top that they don't make sense, or they're not workable, they're not feasible, they don't fix anything in reality. And so until these corporations, these larger scaled companies, or even a smaller scaled company that has this hierarchy built in, until they start listening to the people doing the day-to-day work, the guys in the field, the gals, you know, on the staff, and the guys on the staff too, I guess, until they start really listening to what works and doesn't, they're going to continue to not have these great new messages distributed. And that eventually will turn, and whether it's because those people eventually make it to the top, however long that takes, or they just get to a catastrophic point.
Well, and I think a lot of those companies have lost focus. We've talked about it on the show before, that Wall Street has driven a lot of these decisions to get out of their core focus. You know, one of our competitors did $6.8 billion in 2016, and 3.1 of it came from kind of what used to be third-party add-on services. In fact, the same group just opened a retail store as a high-end flea market, so getting out of the business completely. But, you know, I think that's something that certainly I take a lot of. I learned a lot through this process, and I've been able to relay it through to the broader marketplace and to other companies as well. And I hope that this was an interesting conversation to all the listeners, because this was really us taking a deep dive look at something that we talk a lot about but really hadn't focused on. So Beth, I want to thank you for joining me. As always, you can reach us at whiteboxrealestate.com. Click on the contact us, and we're happy to reach out to you. That's all I got for you today, folks. I'm Grant Pruitt, signing off.